Hello and welcome to the Reviews Brothers. Growing up, my brother, who's a little older, had a real fondness of point and click games. You know, the ones where you point an on-screen cursor and click on things to make things happen. Thanks to him, we ended up with a pretty big collection of them, really. They always had a great set of graphics, deep stories, and on top of it all, some of the most difficult and often nonsensical puzzles I'd ever come across, and I kinda liked it. Since then, I do still play these games every now and then, and can waste away hours trying to find the wrong combinations to use on the totally unrelated object to make something strange happen. And that's what we're going to see here, a selection of point and click games that you might want to try. So, how about I shut up, you press that subscribe button, and we take a look at some games. Let's start with one of my favourites, and one that was actually quite popular at the time. It's Toonstruck. You play as cartoon animator Drew Blank, get it? Who is played by Doc Brown himself, Christopher Lloyd. One day you're up late trying to come up with some new characters for your boss, who's played by the bloke from Ferris Bueller's Day Off and The Mask. Strange things happen and you're sucked into a cartoon world where all of your creations live, as well as a load of characters that you don't know. Turns out there's an evil villain that's turning all of the cute citizens of Cutopia and wacky people of Xanadu into evil creatures with a ray beam that turns them bad. So you meet your failed pilot show character Flux Wildly, and you team up to make a device that can reverse the effects of the evil ray, and of course get Drew back to the real world. There is a lot of story here, and it's actually got some very funny moments in it. They've used great actors, including Tim Curry as the voice of the big bad. The gameplay is your classic point and click. You control a cursor, you point it around the screen, and you'll see it change when there's something you can interact with, pick up, use, or talk to. You'll meet dozens of characters in the game, and talking to them or breaking the ice as the game displays it will give you clues about what's going on, what you need to do, and where you need to go. And you'll want as many clues as you can get, as the puzzles here are often very cryptic, and often just flat out don't make sense. Well, actually they don't make sense in the real world, but they kind of do make sense if you put yourself in a cartoon world. For example, you'll need the giant magnet to help you find a needle in a haystack, you'll need to use the workout equipment in the gym to be strong enough to ring a bell in the test your strength game, or you'll need to use a mouse to scare an elephant. And of course you'll need a whip so you can make the bondage-loving cow happy. It's kinda mad. You need to make sure you scour every inch of the screen with your cursor to make sure you get all the items, but thankfully, as with most point and click games, you can't actually die or lose here, so if you're stuck, you kind of just need to backtrack everywhere that you've been and make sure you've spoken to every character and tried using every object you have with everything you can see. Eventually something will happen. The game can take weeks to beat on your first playthrough, but can be beaten pretty quickly once you know what's what, but that kind of goes without saying for all of these games. It looks great, the digitised Christopher Lloyd looks really good and has a pretty wide variety of animations, and all of the locations and other characters here are incredibly well drawn and put together. There's a ton of animation and it does almost look like a video game version of Roger Rabbit. The characters you meet are memorable and a lot of them made me chuckle just because you notice the references to other media. You can tell a hell of a lot of effort and love went into this one. So yeah, if you're into challenging puzzles, funny antics and Christopher Lloyd, then this is a must-have. I really like it.
The bouncer's disgusting, drool-drenched leftovers.
If you like digitised people but want something a bit darker, you might like Noctropolis. Noctropolis tells the strange tale of Peter Gray, your average Joe shop owner who loves comic books, specifically the tales of the Dark Seer, a cloaked vigilante hero that protects the city of Noctropolis from a bunch of evil bastards who are all working together to take over the town. Wouldn't you know it, you end up getting sucked into the comic book world, where the Dark Seer has gone missing, and you end up donning the mantle of Dark Seer and helping a ragtag bunch of would-be heroes take down the evil crime syndicate that comprises of various comic book stereotypes and sexy lingerie-wearing women. The story is pretty similar to that of Toonstruck really, and is kind of daft and comes across as a bit of a fan fiction from someone who wants to be a superhero and has an excuse to hang around with half-naked sexy women that only talk in innuendo. It's campy and crap and I kind of dig it. Being a point-and-click adventure game, you spend your time pointing and clicking. There are some very obscure puzzles here right from the get-go. This is nothing new to point-and-click games though, really. What I quite like here is that you are doing an investigation as well as taking down the bad guys. This means you need to interrogate a lot of people. There's plenty of dialogue options here, and you really do need to talk to everyone as much as possible, as they'll mention new locations and characters. This then adds new places on your map for you to explore, and when you talk to people, you either have the option to talk to them about the characters that you've just discovered, as well as new locations and events that have already been talked about as well. Though talking to everyone doesn't always help, as some characters won't know others. This can also be quite frustrating though, as a lot of the time you'll need to choose dialogue options in a specific order so you get the information you need, or at least get someone to give you an item that you might want. This can mean a lot of trial and error, or in my case, thinking you've spoken to everyone about everything and spending nearly an hour wandering around, only to find out, thanks to a guide, that I just didn't click the dialogue boxes in the right order and I had to go back and do it again. Thankfully, you can skip pretty much all of the talking, so it doesn't take too long. The puzzles themselves are also tricky and can resort to you trying to use every item with everything you see until something works. What also doesn't help is that the game has a pretty clumsy interface. You right-click to bring up your action selections, which is fine, and there's a lot to choose from, and some of which don't always make sense with what you're doing, like having to choose the move action to pull a lever rather than clicking use, which instead just brings up your inventory. What I do like though is that if you do use an item on the correct screen that you need to use it on, it does everything automatically. You don't specifically have to click on the item and then click where you want to use it. So for example, if you've got a plug and something that needs power, you just choose the power cable from your inventory and the game will sort the rest of it out. There are no smart actions though, so you do always have to manually select the option you want, and I recommend trying every option on everything. You can't just right click on the door or double click it to open it. You have to go to the action menu, select open, and then click on the door. It's a little clunky. Visually, I kind of like how the game looks. It's got dodgy digitized characters and a comic book style background, though it is quite inconsistent. Sometimes things kind of try to look realistic, and other times you might see something like a demon that just looks like it's out of a Disney cartoon. Also, nothing gets highlighted here, which makes it really easy to miss an item. For example, on one screen there was a knife that I needed to pick up, but it was so tiny on the screen that I didn't even realise it was something I could interact with. You need to use the look function and click basically everywhere on the screen in case you miss something. Most of the dialogue here is voiced, and you get video boxes with the characters talking in the usual terrible FMV game style, and I love it. Something that's worth mentioning here is that you can actually die, and you can die quickly and suddenly just by choosing the wrong option somewhere. I recommend saving often and even having 2 or 3 different save files at the same time, just in case you mess up somewhere and want to go a bit further back, because you might lose hours of progress, just like I did. But I really can't decide what my view is on this game. Part of me loves its campy, low-budget horror noir feel, but the clunky menus and often frustrating puzzle designs kind of meant that I was only really having fun when I was looking at a guide, so I didn't get stuck for hours. Though there is also a bit of booby action in here, so that definitely gets it a few bonus points.
I just had to find
The sexiest?
Oh, yes.
Flight of the Amazon Queen is a game that I remember seeing all the time when it came out, but when it was out, I was a big fan of the Monkey Island games and other LucasArts ones, and I assumed it was going to be a bit boring and just a bit of a crappy rip-off. But I've now played it, and I'm very much aware that I was definitely missing out. You are the hilariously named Joe King, a pilot that flies people around the world. You're given the task of flying a sexy Hollywood starlet, Faye Russell, to a remote island where she's doing a photo shoot.
It's locked.
Unfortunately for you, there's a storm and your plane crashes in the jungle. And to make things worse, it happens to be at a time where there's an evil scientist who has set up shop and is creating an army of dinosaur women by kidnapping the local Amazonian ladies and blasting them with his dino ray that transforms them.
I need your help.
So not only do you and your trusty friend Sparky have to find a way off the island, you also need to contend with a stroppy Hollywood diva who wants to sue you and an army of Amazonian dinosaur women. The story is actually told really well, and I really like all the characters here. Joe is your classic wisecracker that isn't fazed by anything and always has an answer for everything, though he doesn't come across as annoying like a lot of characters like this can do. So you need to explore the island, talking to the locals who are definitely a colourful bunch, from missionaries trying to convert the local monkeys to their religion, explorers trying to be captured by the Amazon women so they'll bang them, a tribe of sarcastic locals, and even a gorilla who has a whole load of existential crisis issues. They're all really well written and there's a lot of talking here, but thankfully it's actually fun to listen to and really makes the whole thing feel like an 80s adventure movie, like Romancing the Stone.
Did you hear me?
As always, you'll need to talk to everyone to get clues, and you'll need to pick up a whole load of seemingly random items which will come in handy throughout the game, though I have to say the game does a very good job of not being annoyingly obscure. Often when I found an item, I would already have a vague idea of what I might need to use it for, and there are nice visual clues in the environments and backgrounds a lot of the time, so make sure you pay attention to everything. They're not just pretty to look at. And of course the dialogue here really helps, often the characters making it quite clear with what it is they're after. I like this, and while I did get stuck a few times, for the most part it was never for too long, and the puzzles do all have a logic to them. But yes, there are also the usual adventure game logical answers which are very abstract, but kind of make sense in the world they're in. Here though, they are just fun to figure out. Similar to a lot of games like this, talking to people and exploring brings up new areas of the map for you to visit, where you'll often meet lots of new people and that elusive item that you've probably been looking for. It all looks really great too, the pixel art style is detailed and there's lots of great animation, and I especially like the cutscenes which have lots of character and the voice acting is very good. I can't believe I didn't try this one sooner. It's a great game that I recommend to any adventure game fan.
But I won't.
Wise choice.
How come there?
Men are
Next up is Primordia, which is probably the hardest of all the games in this video. You are a robot guy called Horatio. You were created by humans who appear to be long gone, and you're on a desolate world that may or may not be Earth. You're minding your own business trying to repair your ship when a robot you've never seen before breaks into the wreckage, shoots you with a laser and steals your ship's power core. You're not quite dead though, so you and your flying robo buddy Crispin have to figure out what the hell just happened, who that robot was, and then you need to get your stuff back so you can get back to doing whatever it is that you're trying to do. This of course involves a lot of pointing and clicking and some really dastardly puzzles, some of which I never would have figured out without a guide, I'm sorry to say. Right from the bat you're thrown into it. You'll explore some post-apocalyptic environments filled with junk, scrap and other robots. But as you're something of a scrapper yourself, that's where a lot of the puzzle elements come in. Early on you'll need to do a lot of repairing of various machines and even make devices of your own that can detect power sources and things like that. To do this you'll need to pick up a bunch of trash and junk and then make items with them. It's not always obvious what you need to do, in fact it's rarely obvious. Thankfully you can talk to Crispin who will try his best to help. But what I do like is that they've given the game a really friendly interface. There's no complicated commands like move, pick up, open or so on. Instead, if you just click on something, you'll automatically do whatever you need to with it. Right-clicking will always let you examine things, but left-clicking will automatically open things that can be opened or pick up items that need to be picked up, and it really helps reduce needless clicking on everything. You'll still need to do a bit of trial and error when it comes to your inventory though. You'll need to try combining everything you own with everything else. But you'll also need to do it more than once, as you might have all the items you need to make a device, but at that point you may not realise that you need the device that you can make, if you know what I mean. Basically, I got stuck in a part where I knew I needed to make a plug because I could see where it needed to be plugged in and what needed to be powered up, but because I hadn't clicked on the right things in the background at the time, technically my character didn't know that I needed a plug, so wouldn't make the damn thing. It was kind of annoying and the first of many times I needed to use a guide to get anywhere. Thankfully, the story here is really interesting and kept me wanting to come back and see what happens next. You hear about rumours of huge cities that may or may not exist, and you also meet characters who seem to know you and call you by a different name. You've got no memory of who they are, presumably because your circuits have been wiped, so you really want to find out who you were in the past versions of yourself. It kind of toys with the idea of if you have your memory wiped and you become a totally different being, how much of the stuff you did before are you really accountable for? It's got some really cool themes and they're done in a way that's intriguing without being pretentious. You meet a ton of characters here and you're sometimes quizzed by them on various topics. The game really forces you to pay attention to what everyone is saying, as well as reading any literature you come across as they might ask you about it to progress. And there are literally quizzes on the lore and history of things here. I have to say, I didn't really like those parts. It all looks fantastic though. I love the art style and designs here. The graphics and animation are really good. The game came out in 2012 and they made a good choice giving it pixel art and not some crappy 3D or even pre-rendered graphics. I also really like the voice acting here. Horatio is a cool guy and Crispin does a good job of being the sidekick, though he does get a little annoying at times. But then again, I always hate these sarcastic, wisecracking sidekick characters in most games and movies and things. Most of the time they just aren't funny and I don't get why they insist on including them in pretty much everything. And Crispin is definitely not funny, even though I think he's supposed to be at times. But also, I didn't really find him annoying. This game is really tough. The puzzles here can be brutal, even early on, but if you're smarter than me, which you probably are, and can handle that sort of thing, this has a really cool story that's well worth exploring.
It's not her fault. It looks like I know.
Here is A Vampyre Story, released in the futuristic year of 2008. This is a story about the vampire Mona. You were an opera singer who a wimpy vampire got obsessed with, so turned you into a vampire. Though you never really figured that out and just thought it was a regular curse, which I guess is better somehow. You're cooped up in the castle of Drax, the evil puny vampire, while he goes out to get you some food. Unfortunately, he's rubbish at being a vampire, so he gets killed, so you had left to fend for yourself. Except it turns out that he's trapped you in the castle because he doesn't want to lose you. So you need to find a way to escape the castle, deal with being a vampire, and also achieve your goal of becoming a famous opera singer. The eagle-eyed ones of you out there may have spotted that this game uses polygons instead of pixels, but the gameplay here is still your classic point and click. In fact, it's only the characters that are polygons, the environments here are all hand-drawn, and it all looks pretty good. So you'll need to explore the castle, collecting any items you can find and figuring out how you'll need to use them to progress. As always, the puzzles here are quite obscure, and while some are obvious, other times you'll need to resort to the classic of just trying to use every item with everything else you see until something works. I believe that's technically called throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. What I really like here though is that you can press the tab button on your keyboard and anything you can interact with gets highlighted. This became essential for me, and basically every time I go to a new area I'd press the tab button to see what's around. This made it easy to find things that I normally would have missed, but it doesn't make the whole game easy, far from it, as you'll still need to figure out what the hell you need to use on what. Something else I really like is that if there are things that are too big to carry, but are needed later on, Mona will remember where these things are, and they are kind of added to your inventory but in a blue ghost-like appearance. Then, later on, when you do come to something that requires that item that you saw earlier, you can still select it from your inventory and Mona will remember where it was and automatically go and get it. These items tend to be things that only need to be used once, but it is a nice way to stop senseless backtracking. Not that you won't need to do any backtracking though, because you will. There's lots of characters to meet and interact with here, and they all have a lot to say. As with all these games, you want to make sure to talk to everyone as much as possible, as they'll give you clues for what you want to do next, or how you might need to use the items in your inventory to do things, as a lot of the time it's not always obvious. Like using body lotion as a lubricant on some hinges to open a cellar door, or giving a giant raven a newspaper so he'll take a shit on a gargoyle. Yep, it's wacky and has a good sense of humour. Mona herself is actually pretty likeable. She's not the brightest, but she's innocent and just wants to help people and is actually a pretty cool character. Of course, you have to have the sidekick character that won't shut up and is always sarcastic about everything, and that's your little batmate. He's kind of annoying. I hope these characters die off soon. It's nice to have someone to talk to for hints, but why do they always have to be so obnoxious and annoying? I just don't get it. Graphics wise, I like how it looks. The character models are good and there's plenty of nice animation here, though everything does move really damn slowly. Walking from one side of the screen to the other can sometimes take about 10 seconds. Thankfully, you can press the spacebar to skip just about anything, including walking and talking. So if you're impatient like me, just click where you want to go and press the spacebar and you'll magically just appear there. I'd also quite like the action interface here. It's simple and not overcomplicated like some of them. Yes, I'm looking at you, Nocturnus. Overall though, while this game isn't bad, I do just think it's a bit meh. It's slow paced and I found myself zoning out quite a bit while playing. The characters all move slowly, talk slowly, and even the music is slow, and it makes things feel like they're taking a lot longer than they probably are. And it did mean that when I got to some of the obvious puzzle sections, I just kind of couldn't be bothered and stopped to play another game. But still, it's not bad, and it has some cool moments. Worth a look if you can find it cheap.
The Apostolate's Code of Conduct forbids...
And finally for today, here is Thimbleweed Park, released in 2017. There is a pretty in-depth but fun to follow story here. There's been a murder in the town of Thimbleweed Park, and essentially you've got to go solve it. For the majority of the game, you take control of two FBI agents, Angela Ray and Antonio Reyes, though throughout the game you actually take control of a few other characters for a short while as well. Armed with your usual array of verb commands, you need to explore the town, talking to its very strange and often suspicious inhabitants, finding out what they know or don't know, as annoyingly the body doesn't seem to have any ID and no one seems to have any idea who it is. You'll meet dozens of strange people, some are helpful, some aren't, and some are dressed as pigeons and fix pipes. What I really like though is that as you play, you'll meet people who seem to think they know who should be locked up. They'll tell you a story about another person in the town who essentially then gets added to your list of suspects. But then what's cool is you get to play a segment of the game as the character that they're accusing, so you get to see some of their backstory and kind of start to make up your own mind as to who might be the killer and also why they might have done it. But things are definitely not all as they seem in Thimbleweed Park, as accounts of paranormal goings on and strange signals being broadcast might turn out to be more than just local folktale. Also, as you play as Agent Ray, she keeps talking about completing her own plans. What does that mean? Well, the game is so well made that it is hard to put down and not find out. In terms of the look and feel of it, it does a great job of playing homage to the classic Maniac Mansion. The character designs share a lot of similarities while being a lot more detailed, and the user interface is basically the same. As you're often controlling two characters at once, you can switch between them on the fly, meaning you can be in two places at once, which is nice, as it can stop a lot of backtracking. Each character has their own inventory as well. This can be a pain sometimes when you pick up items that you'll need for a puzzle, but the other character's got the other part, at which point there will be some backtracking, so you can go back and forth to give each other the items that you need. But the map isn't too huge, so it's never really a problem. There's also a nice amount of shortcut keys on the keyboard, making selecting the action you want nice and quick, if you'll need a keyboard that is. I'm playing this docked on my Steam Deck using a mouse and keyboard, so it works nicely for me. If you get stuck at any point in the game, you'll need to go find a phone, and when you do, you can call the in-game helpline to get a clue of where you might need to go next or who you need to speak to. This is a nice way of doing things. The game is also very self-aware and silly, but in a very good way. It often references cliches and tropes of the genre, and the dead body you're investigating even starts to get pixel rot, where the longer it's decaying, the more pixelated it becomes. I really like the writing here, it's just done very well and all the characters are actually very likeable, and amazingly, there's no annoying wisecracking sidekicks. Perfect. I really don't have a lot to complain about with this game. I like the old school style, the story is great, the gameplay is well balanced, it's challenging but not overly frustrating, and the twists and turns in the plot really keep you playing. This is definitely a must play for anyone who likes this sort of game.
It's Bite Me World.
So there you go, a bunch of point and click adventure games that you might want to check out. I hadn't played a game like this for quite a while, and I'd actually forgotten how much I enjoy them. I also forgot that you really have to take your time with them. These are not fast-paced action games, they're deliberately slow ones where you really need to take your time and maybe even keep a notepad handy. As always, let me know what other games I could include if I do a part 2 of this subject, and I wonder how many of you have already commented to say that I forgot to include any of the LucasArts games. It's almost as if I didn't forget, it was deliberate. Anyway, on screen now you can see where you can follow me, so why not do so? I've got loads more content for everyone to enjoy. And now all that's left for me to say is thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.